WHO Talk Show. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
We've been in here fighting.
Yeah.
Out to the ism,
Throwing bows.
to the ism, to the talk show. Right back like we never left. Sir Charles.
For the people who heard that last segment.
It's right. WVI 101 Jams is the flagship station. And I'm just giving the people what we want, what they want per usual. Yeah. Like I try to make sense of things. Razor want to be stubborn about it.
Yeah, Razor's Razor.
Miss Max try to be
what it is.
A mediator until Razor get under her skin. Ain't nothing changed, It's been this way for about 8 years now.
Yeah. No, 9, man.
Oh yeah,
January 1st was 9.
Shoot, yeah, you're right. 2016.
Yeah.
That's right. The longest running
silence
show.
Is an answer.
Yeah, on this station. Good stuff. So, as we stated, May, amongst a bunch of things, as we've come off sort of a mother's theme talk, we also are aware that this is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we thought it would, make sense to bring back an old friend that's always on the battlefield for our mental well-being, particularly when it comes to that of Black folks, the African Americans. Like this brother, I believe Razor introduced this, matter of fact, those years ago when we first started on this journey. But this brother is someone who's unapologetic when it comes to the well-being of our Blackness, right? And our Black selves. And I can't thank the brother enough, for using his esteemed platform to do that. So none other than Mr. Gene Cash, Executive Director over at Counseling Alliances of Virginia. Mr. Cash, how you been, man?
I am doing well, Charles. I am doing very well, and I'm honored. I just love watching you guys.
Appreciate
you.
Did you see that math? Did you see that?
I love it.
Please tell me you went to the bathroom.
No, bro. I was sitting there like, yeah, okay, what's going on?
Oh,
right.
No, it's just love. I just love it. I love you guys, and I appreciate you having me on this afternoon. So
yes, indeed, always. So it is mental health awareness, but I think wouldn't it make sense to get Gene's opinion?
Oh, absolutely.
So Gene, I'm not sure like where you. I'm not sure like where you came in on that last conversation to ask Max when we were talking about things, including the question of is there enough money to replace parenting, right? And we kind of stemmed from the Minnesota Timberwolves Anthony Edwards news that's out there about having 4 kids that he apparently is involved in their lives, but came across one of his baby mothers that he did not want a future with, and also included not wanting a future with that child. So paid 18 years up front of child support after already giving her money for an abortion and extra money for herself. She kept the child, but then he still said, nope, I do not want to be in you all's lives, so take this money and get away from me. What is the impact potentially, on the well-being, the mental health of said individuals?
Oh man, I think there's a huge impact on all levels, from Anthony to the woman who had his child, and down to the child. I believe the impact, because money does not cure everything. The emotional attachments, the loss, the abandonment, the rejection, on all levels. And I'm curious where Anthony gets that from. I'm really worried about how I saw a little bit about this, and I think about, I'm curious around how he was raised and the impact of his environment that put him in this position. And, I always go back to post-traumatic slave syndrome. I think we got to pay attention to where we come from. And Willie Lynch keeps lynching, and this sounds like another lynching in a way. And I worry about the child and the impact that it's going to have. And there's elements of the mother, the impact around her and her decision making. So it's a real complex, guys.
Gene, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, I think I was about to ask. I think you're gonna ask.
Now, I don't know if you're gonna ask this one, Charles, but I'll go ahead. Is it possible that he came from a single family home, that he did not like the way that his mother was? So a lot of times boys end up dating women that remind them of women in their life. So when he saw things that could possibly remind him of his mom or the way he grew up, he didn't want to have nothing to do with that. And that's why he exit stage left.
That's very plausible.
Anything
that is very plausible. That
you understand what I'm saying? With as many families as women have to raise on their own, there are a lot of, I cut hair for 1,000 years. There are a lot of young men who are grown men now who did not have their fathers present, that they love their mamas, but they did not like their mamas. And I don't think women actually know how high that number is. So when you find somebody that reminds you of your trauma, that talked about your daddy, that made you her boyfriend of sorts because she couldn't keep a man, a lot of boys, and I know this firsthand because of how long I cut hair, do not like their moms. They love their moms.
I think, Razor, I believe that's I think everyone has a different story. Everyone has a different narrative, have a different path. I believe that is very plausible. I see it. I definitely see men who, my caseload, I know I have a young male that loves his mother, will do anything for her. However, with the annihilation of the Black man, way back in generation, in our history, it put us in a difficult situation with mothers and sons. And the imposter syndrome that our sons that we grow up with, our internalized devaluation of not feeling good enough. I believe definitely that could be that definitely could cause that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then a question I was going to bring it that I thought Razor was going with it.
Now you talking sense. I don't got no sense.
No, but it was actually something. It was something that Razor said earlier, which does make sense as well. So Razor posed, what if the child is better off, like without a father in his life that does not want him?
Oh, yeah. Guys,
right?
what you're all saying is all real. They're all options. It's never either or. It's a both and. And to feel rejection from someone who doesn't want you, and to have a potential stepfather or somebody come in and to heal that wound is very helpful, because you never want to have constant devaluation, constant dehumanization, not being wanted or being alienated. So yes, and I think that's what comes in some ways. The foster care system, I struggle with some of the things that happen in it, but I learned that sometimes being a Black male therapist, I may be the only person in that kid's life that's been stable with him ever since he's been in foster care. So I'm not his father, right? However, I am filling a void or putting things around him that could really support that. So yes, taking a child away from somebody who doesn't want them is an option, right? And it's helpful, but it's a both end. It depends on the person and the environment. I hope that makes sense.
But Gene, so we're just saying that we're May 2025.
Yes.
Right. And another mental health awareness month. What has changed? What is the same? What is your focus and your team's focus this year as you approach educating people on the importance of mental health once again?
Charles, it's like Black history to me, right? It's every damn day. It's every day. Mental health is every day to me. So I appreciate everyone who makes it a special month, but for me, it's every day. And I think one of the initiatives that I'm really pushing at CAVA is, and I haven't really talked about it much, but in my clinical work, I'm hoax or no hoax. The Willie Lynch letter impacts our mental health a lot, right? And if you haven't read the Willie Lynch letter, if you don't know what it is, Google it, and
that's right.
Start reading up on it. And when I'm looking as how in my mental health, when the work that we're talking about, Willie Lynch was about how to make a slave, right? And I believe it's been turning on its axis for 400, 500 years. And when we come to post-traumatic slave syndrome, something the DSM or the APA, American Psychological Association, doesn't really put the stamp on it, I still really believe it impacts our community. So one of the things around Willie Lynch letter is to create fear, right? Create distrust in us not trusting each other, white people not trusting us, but then also to create envy, right? And that tears our community up. I was literally okay. I was literally in a restaurant last week, and I tried to order some food, and what I watched was our Black community implode in the middle of the restaurant, and it was just sad to watch the Black manager, the Black person ordering something, and then the Black young lady cashier. They were all going at each other, and all I could think about is like the internalized hate that we carry inside of us. So when I think about that, because I'm really pushing around, how do you make a man? How do you rehumanize our mental health? And so, and you can't see it on this shirt, but our new shirt is talking about love one another, trust with courage, and admire and appreciate. And those are things that I'm really pushing, especially in my couples work. When I have the Black woman and the Black man who are struggling to create a strong hierarchy, to create cohesion and connection in their relationships and marriage, pay attention to our intergenerational transmission of trauma. And so that's my push, and I'm pushing all my therapists, white, Black, and Latino, start paying attention to how their history of race and racism impacts to how they do the work. So that's where I'm at this month, every day.
Yeah. Now, our current political climate, like, you have to feel justified, right, in your approach, because I can only imagine that, Gene, you probably go into some spaces, like, you know, with your colleagues, and they question your approach. I got to imagine that, you know, on like, why do you have to focus on, you know, on a specific like race group, right? Like, why is that so important? But then here we are in 2025, and I think most people in the past would not have expected our social issues to be the way that they are, you know, as related to being multicultural, right? To still have to question whether or not there should be equity and inclusivity for people that are different. But we are facing that. So, so how is the current political climate, right? Our current social constructs affecting your work? Like, is it giving you a little more of a bravado when you come in the room now? You're like, see, I told y'all.
Sometimes, yeah. To be honest with you, sometimes I told you this was not leaving, right? But to be truthful with you, it's scary. I'll be honest with you when I talk about race and I think about all the elements and all the things. Because when it comes to white supremacy and white domination, it's like a wallless prison. You don't really see where it's coming from sometimes. And as a business owner and me talking about white supremacy, you know, I may have an auditor come from the state just out of nowhere, or my revenue could be impacted just out of nowhere. Was it really from nowhere, or is it because I continue to talk about race? And so my colleagues they're losing business. They're not able to have the contracts, or the contracts are being minimized. And I appreciate when people say conservative, when people say political climate, and I always say this is white supremacy, white domination, and racism. This has been going on for years. This is just like, it just repeats itself. So it's challenging, and it's fearful when these executive orders come out, but I have to stay steadfast to, I believe that you got to name it. You got to see it first.
Yeah.
You got to name it, and then you got to change it. But if you don't see it, and if you don't name it, you definitely cannot change it. And they're asking us to be quiet. They're asking us not to name it, not to say it, or to call it something that what it's not.
Gene, what do we do when we understand that the supremacy is operating, but the face of it is black?
Oh, shoot, hold on. What you talking about?
Well,
what you talking about?
I mean, let's just say we're broadcasting it out of the Charlottesville area, right?
Sure.
And, you know, here is pretty much the birthplace of America. So anything that going in America pretty much started here. That's why it's so hard to dismantle. That's why people felt comfortable coming down here in the summer of hate, right?
Oh, yeah.
But there was a huge push to get melanated skin and this is in Raise or Something Opinion. This has nothing to do with the show. This is mine totally. Max Charles have nothing to do with what I'm about to say. There was a huge push to get melanated skin in power positions since that time. Now, even before that time, we had melanated positions, but especially since that time, we got melanated people in certain positions. But in my belief, the system is still the system, so that it just has a different face to it, because a person has a right to aspire to a high position because they have worked hard enough to get that job, but they can only do what the system allows them to do. They try to make the best of the situation, but they have to make it operate. If they can't make it operate, they get ousted. Now, you have the regular black community, black and brown community, coming to these people looking for help because they look like them. But then they realize that that person really can't help them because the system isn't set that way. We had a lady on here, jumping subject, Charles. Do you remember the lady came on here that said when they were teaching people how to read or whatever, they had grouped all the black and brown people into either non-white people to become non-American? We're talking about black people that have been here their whole entire lives that aren't trying to get citizenships. They label these people that have reading issues as non-white Americans.
Really?
To be able to get money from the government to fund them. So they have to group the black people in with the Hispanic people and the other nations that come here that don't even speak English. And now black people are labeled into that. That's here in Charlottesville. We had the lady on here and she told us that's how they label us now. So how do you operate when you're dealing with white supremacy, but the face is black?
Wow, that's a complex question for me. When the face is black, right? Because when I first go to, all skin ain't kin. I always say that, right? And I believe that white supremacy and white domination is around, I think you're right, the system, right? Because coming from up north, a different type of plantation that we came from, and coming down south, to watch it operate, the system of white supremacy, has been alarming to me, right? Because we always pay attention to people living in racial oblivion. And really, in essence, racial oblivion is really about assimilation, right, to whiteness. They're just going to operate just as if slavery and Jim Crow and all that continues to happen, right? And what we need to have happen is our own black people, right? Start looking at becoming more racially aware, racially sensitive, racially responsible, right? So when we do have racist attitudes, values, and beliefs that run the system, that we're able to intervene and interrupt them. Because I bump up against but my own people who like, Gene, why do you keep bringing up race? Why do you keep talking about it? Just let it go. I mean, I hope I'm answering your question.
Not to where I understand it. I'm sure that you are, but I guess what I'm looking at for the listener, because I've learned.
Go for it. Help me out.
I've learned how to maneuver in rooms. Not everybody can do that. A lot of people that think that they're maneuvering in the rooms end up being the focal point. You know, you come into the room and you are automatically the one that needs help. You know what I'm saying?
Because you're black.
Right. Regardless.
Right.
So I play dumb all the time, Gene. I do it all the time where people think like, why would you do this? And why would you say that? What? Because I can get deeper in closer to the nucleus if people think that they have to help the dark-skinned black man with the record, right? They don't see you coming as long as you play what they think you're supposed to be.
I told you for years, people didn't know I owned CAVA.
I know. Yeah. We had the conversation.
You know, in order to be able to secure the contract, to secure finances and revenue, right? We had to play like, well, if you take it like that, what about Shadur Sanders? I believe that was a huge buck breaking.
Bring that up.
Yeah, it was huge to dehumanize and devalue this young, successful father, son, and to tell him stay in place.
Shut up and dribble.
Shut up and dribble. Exactly. So it's hard to get off the plantation when the plantation still operates, and it just looks different.
And Gene, you know the big difference there, though. Actually, before I even go there, let's stick a pin right there on Shador, because I'm sure there's some people that may be glazing over right now, or may even be getting offended. Like, man, this is real, sort of like black white heavy. But here's something I think a lot of people don't understand. Like, everybody knows that the hit movie right now is movie Sinners. And it's creating a lot of dialogue, right? Mm-hmm. And like a few things, like 3 things that came out of it were like these documentaries that were told that Ryan Coogler pulled some of his inspiration from, right? Mm-hmm. One, so pretty much, like to encapsulate it without me like belaboring the point, to encapsulate it, it's like people forget that when we're talking about white and black, what race is a social construct, right? Mm-hmm. And so what white supremacy created and has bled into most of the world is that to be white is right. Like white is the epitome. Mm-hmm. And the way that we do it is the way everybody else should try to do it. Mm-hmm. Regardless of who you are, your culture, blah, blah, forget all that. If you want to be successful, you act like this. Mm-hmm. Right. And so like, that's what we're really fighting against. So I want people to understand that it's not about you as a person, like your spirit, your being. It's about this social construct that is white supremacy. And here's my final example there on the point I'm making is that Irish people, like let's say 1930s, right? There was a widely used term called Black Irish, right? Irish people weren't even considered white. Mm-hmm. And what they did was they were able to assimilate, they were able to pass, they were able to become part of the structure, and then could identify themselves as white. Fast forward to today, and we talked about this, Razor. Like, we have a heavy immigrant population in this area now, and those who can classify as white, they do, and they do because again, that is what we're taught is that you should want to be this. Right. This is the way you should act. This is what you should identify as, and that is what, in my opinion, my humble opinion, that's what the Trump administration is carrying out. Whether we want to say it's from Project 25 or whatever, they are trying to erase diversity, equity, and inclusion and say this is the standard.
I know, and I say this in the most respectful way because not everybody is this way, but I know of black guys who have purposely had kids with white women and want their kids to find white counterparts, right? To have a better avenue to success in life. You know what I'm saying? Now I know anybody can find love anywhere, and I'm not saying that, people, but I know personally of black guys who purposely went after white women to have kids in order to give their children a better life.
Yeah. And Gene, the reason that I bring all that up because I want to wrap it back around to the mental well-being, right? The mental health of all of this. Like, what goes through the mind, right? Like, what, or maybe like, how can we better inform people? How can we help people's, I guess, processing of this, right? To be comfortable within themselves and to feel like I can be myself and still be successful, right? Like, I don't have to assimilate to a system that I don't even agree with, but I feel like the only way I can survive is if I assimilate.
I think one of the things, like when you said it might be getting too white, black heavy. One, I really decenter whiteness. I'm not really worried about them as far as whiteness. I'm not. And I think they need to get more comfortable with being white and their ancestry of dehumanization and devaluation. So that's one. And then one of the things when you made me bring up is around the psychological homelessness. We all walk in. And also, I like that you're saying, it's a white supremacy ideology, right? It's not about just white people, but it's the mindset. I'm reading Waking Up White and just listing how white people were indoctrinated to be white, to be able to think about hating another person, to be able to think about to be a bystander and watch someone else being dehumanized, right? So I just think about all the wounds that we all carry. I think Ken and I, we go back and forth around, Dr. Hardy, back and forth around, does white supremacy impact white people? And I think it does, right? But as far as us, this level of psychological homelessness, like Ray's is talking about this brother who wants to impregnate a white woman and have his white kids assimilate to whiteness. That is all psychological wholeness. His soul, his assaulted sense of self was damaged from birth. Like I told you, I wrote, my mom, she raised me and said, you will grow up and compete with white people. That's what I'm raising you to be. Because I don't want you to be poor. I don't want you to be broke. I want you to be successful. I mean, that's what she did from all of us. But then think about all the hate that she had to carry in 1960 when she had 3 black kids and a father who was struggling and a husband who was struggling with drug addiction and the crack cocaine being put in our communities.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So all those things are all wounds that we haven't, like mental health wise, we really haven't uncovered. Because one of the things is, I think we take a white centric approach to mental health. When you look at all the theorists, they're all white that are published. Like who I got trained by was Beck, Salvador Minuchin, Jay Haley. All these people are white. You know, where's black? How is our? And then I struggle with going all the way to the Afrocentric side, leaving out me being American, right? Because I can pull from Africa and all those rituals, but that's not where I was born. So what I really pay attention to is like my blackness, my soul, and how it was impacted by white supremacy, right? So, and you're talking about sinners, and I hope I saw it twice. I walked back into the next one with my little book, took my notes, and I'm going back to see it again.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Because I was mad about Wakanda 2. I didn't like what Ryan Coogler did.
I didn't like it either.
I struggle with that. I'm not going to get into that. But
ask you, Chief, are we making any progress here in terms of improving our mental health and having somewhat of a psychological home? And the reason why I ask that is that I would like to think and hope that my children are better off than I was, being born 1980s, so being raised in the 80s, parents were born in the 50s, 60s. Those things that I dealt with, things I were able to recognize were correct parenting, situations I'm able to now analyze as an adult and make sense of those things. All that culminates to me, hopefully, in some areas, being a better parent and providing a better home for my kids than I had. And I guess the thought for everybody is that with each generation, things get better and better and better. You got on the show, I heard you say that mental health is what you do every day. You sound like you really made it sound like we still got a long ways to go. So I'm just wondering, like, are we any better?
Max, what I always said this, and surrounding emergent thinking, I said it ever since I started this in 2017, this work, is I'm looking for an inch, just an inch, but I want it to be a mile deep, right? So change is going to look different, right? For me to be on here for, 7, 8 years talking about race, that's different. Me walking into schools and communities and agencies and being able to talk about race, and I've had some wonderful, courageous people, teachers, principals, superintendents, who are creating space for race that did not exist. So yes, I believe change is happening. However, it's not going fast enough for me. It's not. So I believe our children, your children, yes, are better, but with white supremacy and our current administration, they're asking us to go backwards. They want us to go backwards. And if we have, and I believe this is a white problem, and I hate when we put it on black people as our problem. I really believe that white people, I encourage you to not be just bystanders to this, and to really be not just an ally to this, but be a co-conspirator to really interrupt it. So our children and their children can be able to have a different mindset when it comes to liberation and valuing people. So,
Gene, can I push back a little bit?
Always.
I don't know if we're better. And when it comes to our children, I understand what you said about opening up space. I don't know that we're better because I think there was a period that my generation and a little bit ahead of me went into survival mode and did not show the younger generation what the older generation went through so that they could be here and do what they're doing. So our children don't really understand when they hear the N word being used by somebody who does not look like them, that they call their friend and say, oh, well, they don't mean it like this. You know, I can't say that we're better because I think the bulk of us with education became, I'm going to just say it.
Go ahead.
As we got more educated, we became sellouts, right? So we started thinking about, okay, if I got a child in college and if I got this good job and, you know, I'm making good money, ain't that what they say, Jane? That I can't let anything jeopardize it. So especially when it comes to allowing somebody that looks like me to come into the same space, I have to vet you to make sure that you don't do nothing that's going to make them look at me and then we both lose out, or just I lose out. So I think that we are more cowards nowadays. I think that we are more separated, you know, because when we started using words like calling each other ghetto, we were trying to separate how we act amongst one another. When we get upset when somebody says, you know what I'm saying, or this, that, and that, and we focus on the dialect of a person that looks like you because it does not sound like what you consider to be educated, you know, there's a problem with that. So I personally think that we are further behind now than we were in the 60s and 70s, because at least at the 60s and 70s, all of us had the same wooden fork and spoon on the wall. All of us had in our grandma's house, the footprints in the sand. When you go into our houses now, they are very much made to look non-black. The more educated a person is, the less black their house looks, unless they want to feel like they're tapping into Africa and then everything is a dashiki. You know what I'm saying? So
you're making a lot of blanket statements.
Well, no, I'm just saying, y'all ain't had me on here for a while. I'm getting ready. I know it ain't gonna be another 6 months before they let me back on here. So
I'll come back to
you know, I agree with you. You know, you and I are deep friends. We have good conversations, but I'm also honest with what I see in the mud. You know what I'm saying? To be doing better in life is to be less black in our communities now. And we expect to come out of what we in, and even though we dilute ourselves, and we can't blame that on white people. Black people are doing that.
I disagree with you. I disagree with you on that.
All right, well, come on with it then.
I disagree with you around who's the blame, right?
No. I didn't say that they shouldn't share no blame, no more than Chinese. Well, for lack of a better word, y'all, I'm not saying anything harmful. Hispanic people don't always like black people.
No, they don't.
Italians don't like black people. No. Chinese, Japanese people don't like black people. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's equally. I think we choose to always look at the white side of things because that's who brought us over here and gave us our atrocities. But if everybody else is also looking down on us and holding us back, or come and put stores in our neighborhoods but never invest back into the neighborhood, and we don't say nothing because I can just walk down there and get my little Kit Kat and my Pepsi, and that's enough, I think there's a problem, and that's black people.
No, I disagree with you, my brother. I wholeheartedly disagree with you.
Okay.
That is white supremacy.
Okay.
Redlining. That is the system doing its best.
Okay.
Because we had black communities and black towns that were successful, and they put their foot on our neck and broke them. Right? So when we were trying to be successful, and that's where I struggle with some of the Africans who come over here who talked about us being lazy, right? But then after they got to know what was really going on, a lot of my friends and colleagues talked about, you're not lazy. People had their foot on your neck. And every time you were successful, they burned it down and tore it down. And then the black inferiority complex that we created on ourselves, we blame ourselves. And I was at So upset. I was at this Smash Burger over on the north side of Richmond, and the owners from Yemen, in our black community, the owners from Yemen, but the brother in that I was talking to was talking about how we struggle to have these businesses. But being a black business owner, and I know you too, right? Get a loan or to get, you know how it's difficult for me to get a lease or property because of my skin.
Yeah.
Profit margin, profit loss statements given. Oh, Gene Cash, you're approved. And all of a sudden I walk in and you see who I am. Oh, we're going to go a different direction.
Yeah.
So I can't blame me, right? But I think the system is designed for us. Remember I said, love one another, appreciate and admire and trust, right? They taught us not to do that. They taught us to create envy and to dehumanize one another.
When does it become a choice?
When you start to see, because right now we're oblivious. We're walking in assimilation, and once you start to see truth, then it becomes a choice. But until then, you're blind. We're walking in blindness.
Yeah, and also want to add like that definitely stems from what we were saying a minute ago, which is we got to remember that like we're a threat, right? Yes. Like to the system, we're perceived as a threat. Yeah. I even heard one scholar say that we can't, like we're the only ones that can't change our skin. Right. Now, don't take that too literal.
Yeah.
But it's like,
I got you.
Like, but when we talk about who's setting up businesses and stuff like that, it's like to the system, they're not a threat. Like, why else would Black history be the only thing under attack right now?
Yeah.
Blackness is under attack.
Yes.
Because we are juxtaposed to the system.
Yes.
Yeah.
But y'all don't think that we do that to ourselves sometimes too? Because I can personally tell you, because I don't always play the game here in Charlottesville, the Black elitists as known don't always fool with me because I won't let nobody stand on my shoulders.
Right. Yes, but that's not everybody. That's the only issue that I have is that like the blanket statement of it being
I'm
like
just
everybody.
Saying, like, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like any point that we make, it's not going to be the exact thing that we're talking about. And that's why the white supremacy mindset also, in my opinion, funnels to Black people because the mindset. Yeah. It's not always what's being done. Because if it's a person of Chinese descent doing it to me, I'm not thinking about white supremacy. I'm thinking about what you doing right here. You know what I'm saying? So that's that perception is their perception of me is my reality.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Whether I buy into it or not.
It happens all the time. Like when we look at crime, right? Like, that they like to call Black on Black crime. It's like,
I know, right?
Like in every instance, it's going to make sense to take out your frustration on whoever's around you. It's no different than the man that get beat up at work, but scared to say something to his boss. So he may go home and take it out on his wife. Right. It's like that happens in our communities a lot. And then we forget who's the problem and we treat each other like we're the problem.
Yeah.
Something else that's very real, Gene, is the mental health impact on being readily available to check everything that comes through that is disrespect or whatever you want to call, however you want to label it, that a person may feel on their Blackness or being female or something that's done against the Black people as a group, that it can be emotionally exhausting. While I guess it's also an obligation for that a person has to take on, especially for themselves or their children, family, strangers, what have you. And so I honestly, I'll tell you, find myself making choices. What should I walk away from? And what do I have time for today?
Yeah. Max, there's an author, I can't remember her name, but it was Black Fatigue. We walk in Black fatigue every day, and we have to make good mental health choices. Because a lot of people say, I just couldn't watch it, Gene, or I just turned the TV off, because they have to separate themselves from all the pain, the vicarious trauma that's happening to us. So the one thing that you said is God dang, it's leaving me. The Black fatigue, hopelessness that we carry. and you have to make choices. Now, the other thing that I think we don't talk about is the power and the responsibility, right? So sometimes things are not in our power and it's not our responsibility. So we should be able to say, okay, I'm not going to step into that today. But if I choose, if I have the power, in which in some spaces I do have power, and in some relationships I do have a responsibility. When I'm walking through, I boycott Whole Foods. I don't go there anymore. I boycott Sam's. I don't go there anymore. But when I'm walking through these places, sometimes I just gotta let stuff go because I don't need to take on every single battle. But
so when do we know it's not our fight?
One, it's always our fight in some ways, my brother.
No. I'm talking about when it's not us.
What do you mean?
Like everybody ties in their struggle with the Black struggle.
Yes.
But then when we need help, nobody shows up. You know, we might get representation, but we never get advocates.
But can I get your initial response though?
Yeah. Let me don't go there yet. Don't go there because I just want to go back to Max's point around sometimes we have to step away and walk away, but we have to understand our power and our responsibility. And Max, it's really it's our choice, right? And I was working with a group and they kept talking about when to intervene on a racially abusive transaction, aka microaggression. I said when there's mutual respect, right? When I am talking about something and the person who is the perpetrator of the microaggression is actually able and willing to have that conversation, but if they're not, walk away. You don't have to engage or keep, but say what you need to say to liberate your soul. But after that, don't be tied to the results. So I don't know if that's, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but the Black fatigue is real, and taking breaks is definitely worth the mental sanity that we all deserve.
Like that.
Thank you.
We are talking to none other than Gene Cash, and as we kind of come to a close, want to make sure that we touch on all that we want to. Only thing that I'm still thinking, y'all, is we brought up Shador Sanders.
Oh yeah,
and since that's such a hot topic, Gene, definitely want to go back to that real quick. Of course, from the mindset, from the from the mental well-being of it. And I think most know, but for those that don't know, star collegiate football player who is the son of Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, was coached by his father, really mentored by his father, as well. And so was top prospect, like one of the best QBs. When I say one of the best, meaning like top 2 quarterbacks projected coming out of college in this year's NFL draft. So as fate would have it or whatnot, the word that's coming out is that his talent was never questioned, but it was his demeanor. It was his approach. It was the demands that he and his father were reportedly making to these teams, like their disposition with owners. And I say owners very intentionally.
Yes.
So round after round, quarterback pick after quarterback pick, his name was not called. He eventually was called in the 5th round. Someone who was argued to maybe be the first pick of the draft was picked in the 5th round. And so the word coming from it, even from the teams, was that it was never a question of his talent. It was more about his personality, as they would put it. And reports were coming out about, again, they were making demands about what teams they would play for, what they would need, and blah, blah, blah. So the argument is that this isn't the first time that star athletes from star families have made such requests. Like people talk about the Manning family. And a lot of people remember Eli was drafted by the Chargers.
Yep.
Archie Manning, his daddy, said no, he's not playing for the Chargers.
Yep.
So then they worked out a deal for him to go to the Giants. He wanted to go to New York. Right. So nobody really remembers people batting too much of an eye when that happened. And then people talk about, like LeVar Ball and even LeBron James. Right. Tiger Woods' father, Serena and Venus's father, about how Black fathers are getting portrayed in a certain way. So, Gene, so the mindset that, because a lot of us face that we may not be millionaires and celebrities, but a lot of us face that same ordeal. Right. Of if I'm too vocal, if I'm too much of myself, if I ask for what I believe I deserve, then I might not get it. And I've been a part of hiring processes, right, Gene?
Yes.
And it is proven that men of color, and then especially women, they do not ask for more money, or they do not question offers as much as white people do, out of the fear that they won't get the job if they ask.
Yes, definitely. That is real.
And so sort of talk about that just embodying that, right? Of not being able to ask questions and the impact that has on somebody, because they could fall like, Shedeur Sanders fell from his expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if Shedeur fell.
Mm-hmm.
He was thrown. Mm-hmm. He was cast away. He was castigated. He was castrated.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't fall. That was purposeful. And it was I think it was to show the power that they carry, right? I look at it the bully, the victim, and the bystander, right? The bully, the owners. And that's what I think Michael Strahan said. Whoever did this, they didn't even come out and say they did it. They just did it. And then you have the victim, the Sanders family, but then all the bystanders that watched and didn't say a word.
Was it a shot on Shedeur or Dion?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Really?
I think it's both. You cannot be a Hall of Famer and come in and look like Nick Saban in the NCAA and get a contract in Colorado and be comfortable, and then raise a son who's going to become just as powerful. No, when it comes to the bully, white supremacy, they don't want that to happen, because all you got to do is say Johnny Manziel. So what I'm saying, Johnny in Cleveland, he was horrible. But look where he landed. Or who was the other guy? Baker Mayfield, right? He was. They were both 10 times worse than Shedeur. But because of Shedeur's complexion and melanin, no, you can't have an uprising citizen. He did nothing wrong. And I hate when people talk about he was arrogant, he was cocky. Why couldn't he just been confident? Why couldn't he just be confident?
Right.
And self-assured?
Because that reminds me. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because his father was a Hall of Famer. His dynasty, his legacy, like legendary, his legacy put him where he's supposed to be. And look at what he's doing in Cleveland. I just love it, because I'm from Oberlin, Cleveland. I just love him walking through that city and inspiring Black and brown people. So I'm sorry. That's it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Great take. Wanted to get your take on that, but Rez, I don't know what you have. But I want to make sure
remember the thing that you and Gene were talking about on the last show, where when we were talking about the police and comply.
Yes.
Like whenever they come to you, you comply, right? Essentially, everything that y'all been talking about was them showing how you need to, like what you said, if you're going to be successful, you're going to act this particular way. Yeah. If you want to make it through here, this is what I'm comfortable with dealing with. So you comply. This is very much what we went through with the police some years ago, but it's an old game.
Yes.
They say, okay, this is where you need to fit in this box. The further you're out this box, if they were doing all the things that Dion has them doing and they were show ponies, there wouldn't have been a problem. Right. But because they started making demands, now you're trying to sit at the same table as us.
Yes.
Yeah, makes sense.
And that wasn't going to happen.
Which I could be wrong, but I believe at some point in the future, it's still going to happen anyway. And I mean, we've seen time and time again where the attempt has been made. I mean, heck, look at our history in this nation, but where the attempt has been made to set back and set down and hold up our progress. And it may have slowed things down, but it's still to no avail.
Didn't stop it.
And all this man needed was to get in the door. So I'm not entirely convinced that whatever they were trying to do, he might go off and make things worse, but I'm not entirely convinced that they taught the lesson that they, so to speak, was trying to teach.
Good point, Max. So yeah, it's good stuff. But Gene, we are up against the clock, my man. Always great. Last words. How do people reach out to you that this may be their first time hearing from you, and now they want to have a session with you?
Okay. Well, you can always go to our website, www.cavahelps.com. We are in Charlottesville and Richmond area, and we are always here to help, care, and serve the communities. I think that's the best way. I don't run time, But yeah, we also offer support groups. The breathing room is open every fourth Wednesday. That's just for Black and Brown. I remember Max asking me, "How can you do that just for Black people?" Why are you doing that? Because I have a platform, and I believe that Black people should be honored just as well as everybody else.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah, maybe an off-color joke and ask, did you have a sign on the door that said "No whites allowed"?
No, I never said no. I didn't put a sign.
Rachel's supposed to say that, not you.
Rachel ain't that crazy. No, sir.
Right. But I'll send you guys some email and let you know what's happening in our community because we're doing great things. Dr. Hardy's coming this week. He's coming virtually, so I'll make sure you have that information as well.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gene. As always, until next time, sir, please don't be a stranger. Anytime you got something coming on, hit us up.
I got you guys. Appreciate you. Love you. And one more thing. I'm sorry. Yeah. Compassion. Razor. The answer to this is compassion. We have to have compassion for our own people. If we don't have compassion, we will keep devaluing ourselves.
I got to work on that.
Yes, we do. All right, love you guys. Appreciate it.
Love you back, brother.